Have you ever felt that someone you care about, a partner, a friend, maybe even one of your own kids, has quietly stopped trying? The calls aren't as frequent, the effort isn't the same, and you're left wondering if you should chase after them or just let it go. Many of us in midlife or retirement face this crossroads, not only in love, but in family connections. And here's the truth: chasing rarely brings closeness back. But there are better ways. When we feel someone slipping away, the instinct is often to run after them with everything we've got. We call more, we text more, we ask questions, we push for explanations. It comes from a place of love, but it can feel to the other person like pressure, like being cornered. Chasing creates a dynamic where one person is always running and the other is always following, and that rarely builds closeness. A gentler approach is to shift from chasing to inviting. Think of it like setting a warm table in your home. You cook the meal, you light the candle, you create the atmosphere. Then you simply say, "The door's open whenever you're ready." You don't drag them inside, you don't demand they sit down, you let the warmth do the work. In families, this can be as simple as saying, "We're making your favorite pie on Sunday. We'd love to see you if you're free." Notice the difference compared to, "You never visit us anymore. Why don't you care?" One is an invitation, the other is a guilt trip. Invitations create possibilities, while chasing closes them off. Even with a spouse or partner, the same principle holds true. Instead of pressing with, "Why don't you talk to me anymore?" you might gently invite by sharing, "I'd love to hear what's been on your mind whenever you feel ready." That small shift respects their timing while making it clear you care. The truth is, most people want to feel drawn back, not dragged back. Think about a garden: flowers bloom toward the sun, not toward hands tugging at their stems. Your job isn't to pull, it's to shine in a way that makes returning feel safe and natural. When you focus on creating a welcoming space instead of chasing, you protect your own dignity and you lower the other person's defenses. Sometimes they step in right away, other times it takes months, but the tone you set matters far more than the number of reminders you send. And here's the surprising part: invitations work even if the person doesn't accept them right away. Because deep down, people remember how you made them feel. They may not come to every dinner, but they'll remember the warmth of being wanted without being pressured. That memory lingers, and often it's what nudges them back when the time is right. So when you feel the urge to chase, pause. Ask yourself, how can I extend an invitation instead? The answer usually brings more peace than running ever could. When someone you care about seems to pull away, the natural response is to pour all your attention into them. You replay conversations in your head, you wonder what went wrong, and you try harder to bridge the gap. But the more energy you pour outward, the more empty you may feel inside. This is where investing in your own peace becomes not only wise, but necessary. Peace is not something that arrives once other people behave the way you want. It's something you cultivate daily, like tending a small garden. When you redirect that restless energy into caring for yourself, you stop living in reaction and start living with intention. Investing in your peace can look very practical. Maybe it's waking up early to sit quietly with a cup of tea before the house stirs, or setting aside time for morning walks where you notice the small changes in your neighborhood trees. It could be signing up for a class you've always thought about, painting, photography, or even ballroom dancing. These aren't distractions, they're reminders that your life has color and rhythm beyond anyone else's choices. Each new step reinforces the truth that your joy doesn't have to be dependent on whether someone calls, visits, or tries harder. Consider the difference in energy when two people meet: one person anxious, waiting for reassurance, and the other calm, grounded, and already fulfilled. Most of us are naturally drawn to the second. Peace has its own quiet magnetism. When you cultivate it, you don't have to beg for connection. Your steady presence often invites others back without a word. This is why investing in your inner calm is not selfish. It's one of the most generous things you can do for the people you love. You're showing them a version of you that is whole, centered, and not dependent on their every move. There's also freedom in realizing that even if someone doesn't return the way you hope, your peace is not lost. You've built it in places they cannot touch: your morning rituals, your friendships, your creative outlets, your faith or meditation practices. Those are wells that never run dry just because one relationship feels uncertain. And when people see that steadiness, they often respond differently. The absence of chasing, replaced by a calm assurance, can be the very thing that shifts the dynamic. So when you feel the pull to give or worry, pause and ask, how can I invest in my own peace today? That question alone may be the key to finding balance again. It's easy to slip into a silent scoreboard in relationships. You send a text, and you notice how long it takes for them to reply. You remember the last time you called, and you wait to see if they'll be the one to call next. Before long, every act of love is weighed against whether it's returned in equal measure. While this feels natural, it quickly turns connection into competition. The truth is, meaningful communication isn't about keeping things perfectly even. It's about creating a steady rhythm of care that doesn't demand repayment each time. Think of a grandparent who never misses a birthday card. Maybe the grandchildren don't always respond right away, maybe they forget a thank you now and then, but years later those cards often become cherished keepsakes. The love was steady, given without tallying points. That doesn't mean ignoring neglect or staying in a one-sided relationship forever, but it does mean refusing to turn every exchange into a transaction. When we stop keeping score, our communication softens. A note that once carried resentment, "I guess I'm always the one who calls," becomes instead, "Just thinking of you today and wanted to hear your voice." One approach pressures, the other invites. This doesn't mean you abandon your needs. Boundaries still matter. But boundaries aren't about keeping score either. They're about protecting your well-being while staying open-hearted. You can choose to reach out every so often, not because you're owed anything in return, but because you value the connection. Ironically, when people feel they aren't being measured, they're more likely to step forward willingly. No one likes feeling that every word will be judged against an invisible chart. A helpful way to picture this is like playing music. If you're both trying to match notes perfectly, the melody gets stiff. But if one person keeps the rhythm steady, the other often joins in naturally. Relationships need that same rhythm, gestures that flow without constant calculation. You give, you share, you listen, not as an exchange of goods, but as an act of trust. And here's the quiet gift: when you communicate without keeping score, you protect your own heart from bitterness. You free yourself from the exhausting task of counting who did what and when. Instead, you focus on what you can give with sincerity. Over time, this kind of communication builds a deeper sense of safety. People may not remember every word you spoke, but they will always remember how it felt to be in your presence, free of tally marks, welcome just as they are. One of the hardest lessons in relationships is realizing that leaning in harder doesn't always create closeness. Sometimes, the more you press, the more someone pulls away. That's why the idea of stepping back can feel so counterintuitive. We're taught to fix problems by doing more, by showing up louder, by insisting on attention. But human hearts don't always respond to effort in that way. In fact, sometimes the quiet strength of stepping back creates the space that lets another person return on their own terms. Think of it like a rubber band. If you keep pulling, all you create is tension, and eventually it may snap. But if you ease your grip, the band naturally relaxes, and there's room for it to stretch without breaking. Relationships often work the same way. When you stop filling every silence with questions or pushing for constant reassurance, you allow breathing space. A spouse who's withdrawn may open up more quickly if you don't rush in with, "What's wrong?" every evening. A grown child who hasn't called in weeks may feel safer to pick up the phone when they sense there's no guilt trip waiting on the other end. Stepping back doesn't mean indifference. It's not slamming the door or shutting down. It's about trusting that the bond is strong enough to withstand pauses. It's about saying, "I'm here when you're ready," and then living your life in the meantime. That kind of quiet confidence is powerful. It communicates love without control, care without suffocation. And for many people, that space is what draws them back. No one enjoys feeling chased, but nearly everyone appreciates being given room to breathe. Here's the surprising part: stepping back often strengthens not only the relationship, but also your own sense of self. You learn that your happiness doesn't have to hinge on constant contact. You discover that you can stand on your own 2 feet while still holding the door open. And when the other person returns, they don't come back to pressure. They come back to presence. That difference changes everything. So the next time you feel the urge to close the gap by leaning in, try the opposite. Step back a little. Let the silence have space. Allow the bond to prove its resilience. You may find that what felt like distance was simply the room both of you needed to breathe, and in that space, connection often grows stronger. When relationships begin to feel unsteady, the instinct is often to try harder in the moment. Send more messages, plan more outings, have one more serious talk. While these efforts come from a good place, they can also feel temporary and fragile. What truly sustains bonds over time isn't constant effort alone, but shared traditions. Traditions act like anchors, steadying relationships even when individuals drift or life gets complicated. They don't depend on daily energy. They create rhythms people can return to even after distance or disagreements. Think about a simple ritual like Sunday dinners. Maybe not everyone shows up every week, but the tradition itself remains. People know it's there, predictable, safe, comforting. A grandchild may skip a few months, but when they're ready, they know that table is still set. That rhythm is often more powerful than constant reminders or pleading phone calls. Traditions carry their own quiet pull. They remind us of belonging without needing to be spelled out each time. Even small traditions can work this way. A morning walk with your spouse, a holiday game of cards with friends, baking cookies with your grandchildren each December. These rituals don't demand much conversation about effort or fairness. They simply create touch points where connection naturally happens. Without them, relationships can feel like they're floating, dependent on how much energy each person has at a given moment. With them, there's a sense of continuity that makes reconnection easier. There's also something healing about traditions because they shift the focus from performance to presence. You don't have to prove how much you care each time. You just show up to what has already been established. In families, this can make all the difference. Instead of arguing with a sibling who hasn't called, inviting them to a long-standing family barbecue may feel less like a demand and more like an open door. Instead of chasing an adult child to visit, keeping the tradition of mailing them a holiday letter or sharing a favorite recipe provides a consistent thread they can always grasp when they're ready. The beauty of anchoring in traditions is that they hold even when effort fades. Life is full of seasons. Some people will try less, some will withdraw, and sometimes you yourself won't have the energy. But traditions are like steady lighthouses. They don't chase ships, they simply stand, shining, making it easier for people to find their way back when the waters settle. And often, that quiet steadiness speaks louder than any plea for effort ever could. When someone stops trying, it's natural to feel torn between two impulses: closing yourself off completely to avoid pain, or giving endlessly in hopes they'll come around. Both extremes can leave you feeling either isolated or drained. The healthier path is learning how to protect yourself, respect while staying open-hearted. This balance allows you to honor your worth without shutting out the possibility of reconnection. It's not about pride or coldness, but about holding your dignity as you continue to care. Protecting self-respect begins with the simple truth that you are not defined by how much effort others give you. If a partner is distant or a family member is absent, that does not mean you are unworthy of love. Too often, people slip into the mindset of, if they don't call, I must not matter. But dignity means separating your sense of value from someone else's behavior. You can acknowledge the hurt without letting it write your story. At the same time, protecting your self-respect doesn't mean building walls so high no one can reach you. Staying open looks like keeping the door unlocked. Even if you're not standing on the porch waiting all night, it might sound like saying, I'd love to see you this weekend if you're free. If not, I'll still enjoy my day. That sentence does two important things. It extends warmth, and it affirms that your peace is not dependent on their decision. You offer connection without sacrificing yourself. This balance also helps prevent bitterness from taking root. When you close off entirely, you may feel strong at first, but resentment often grows quietly underneath. When you overextend, you risk resentment in another way, feeling used or taken for granted. But when you stand firmly in your self-respect and still keep your heart soft, you create a healthier dynamic. Others can sense that you are open but not desperate, caring but not clinging. That tone often invites them back more effectively than pleading ever could. Perhaps the most freeing part of this approach is that it places control back in your hands. You can't dictate whether someone tries harder, but you can decide how to show up with dignity, with kindness, and with boundaries. That combination makes you a safe person to return to while ensuring you don't lose yourself in the process. And over time, people usually remember the ones who stayed open without ever losing their self-respect. It's a quiet strength that lingers. So if you've noticed someone has stopped trying, don't chase. Invite, nurture your own peace, keep traditions alive, and most of all, hold on to your dignity. Love given freely is remembered. Love demanded is often resisted. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever stopped chasing and found that someone came back on their own? Or maybe you discovered peace, even if they didn't. Share your story in the comments. I promise it might help someone else who's watching right now.